This is StoryBeat, Storytellers on Storytelling, an exploration into how master storytellers and artists develop and build brilliant stories and works of art that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators of all kinds find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to give us a rating or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. Well, my guest today, Barbara Bleier, is a singer, actor, and playwright who's appeared on stage, in film, and on TV, as well as in solo shows and revues nationally and internationally in the cabaret world. Barbara played the mother of a psychopathic killer in the cult classic Swoon, appeared in the film This Is Where I Leave You with Jane Fonda and Tina Fey, and They Came Together with Paul Rudd and Amy Poehler. Her theatrical one-woman show, Who's Your Mama?, was selected for production in the New York City Women at Work Festival. Along with one of my favorite StoryBeat guests, Austin Pendleton, Barbara has appeared in various critically acclaimed cabaret shows over the last 20 years, including Bits and Pieces, Late Nights in Smoky Bars, 'Tis the Season to Be Morbid, and Beautiful Mistake, the songs of John Bucchino and Amanda McBroom. Amanda is another one of my favorite guests on this podcast. In her spare time, Barbara is also a psychoanalyst, who is an adjunct clinical supervisor on the faculty of the New York University postdoctoral program in psychoanalysis and psychotherapy. She's worked in community mental health and the family court of New York City and has had an independent practice for more than 30 years. She's written numerous articles relating to social issues and women's issues for professional conferences, scholarly journals, and lay publications. Lauren Mills of Chew the Scene wrote of Barbara, Bleier is a dynamo who mesmerizes you as soon as she hits the stage. Her on-point singing and captivating storytelling lures you into her musical journey. Please be sure to stick around at the end of the show to hear Barbara perform the Michael Feinstein-John Bucchino song, Carnegie Hall. For those reasons and so many more, I'm truly honored to welcome the extraordinarily talented Barbara Bleier to StoryBeat today. Barbara, welcome to the show.
Hey, Steve, it's really wonderful to meet you and to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
The honor is all mine, trust me. So you've been performing now for some time. This is not new to you at all. How did all this...
Since I was 4.
Since you were 4?
Yeah.
So that was just two or 3 weeks ago, right?
Yes, exactly. Oh, I'm so glad you picked that up.
So how did all of it begin? You started at 4? Were you just singing around the house, or how did that work?
No, I started out as a classical pianist.
Ah.
Yeah, I was it was the day of the child protege.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons Carnegie Hall means so much to me, because I played there when I was 4.
I see. You played in Carnegie Hall when you were 4 years old?
Yes.
Wow. You must have been amazing.
I couldn't reach the pedals.
But you could play the keys but not reach the pedals?
Yes.
Was somebody down sitting on the ground pushing the pedals for you?
No, we just didn't do pedals.
Just didn't do pedals.
Yes.
And were you just naturally gifted at it?
Yeah, I guess so. I also started studying very early.
Mm-hmm.
I read music before I read words, and I read words at 4.
Wow, that's very impressive. I still to this day, though I have a musical theater background, some people know, I can't read music. I don't know how to read music.
One of my favorite songwriters, John Bucchino, also doesn't read music.
Is that right? He's just a naturally gifted pianist.
Yes.
That's awesome. So who were then your earliest influences? I mean, who did you listen to?
I went to concerts very early. I listened to Vladimir Horowitz. I listened to Arthur Rubinstein. My mom really started me on the violin, but apparently I threw it. Happened. Yes, I don't remember this, but there is a picture of me with the violin. And so they figured the piano was too heavy to throw.
Well, it could have been a tuba. You're lucky it was a
Yeah,
piano.
really. The girls didn't play tubas then.
So did you think of it then, and maybe not so early, but at some point, did this feel like a calling to you? Like it was something you were supposed
Yes.
to be doing?
Yes, absolutely.
I see. So, so this came to you, I guess, as naturally as it's going to come to anyone. It's as natural as breathing for you.
Yeah, it really, it's my first language.
It is. And do you listen to music all day long today?
I listen to a lot, but not all day long.
Not all day long, but you do listen to a lot of music.
Oh,
It
yeah.
is. It's like breathing to you.
Yes, it is.
I'm sure it is.
It is. My kids used to joke when they were little that every time they'd say something, I'd have a song to go with it.
Did you have formal training? I mean, did you?
Oh, yes.
From a little kid on, yeah?
Yes, at the piano, not vocally.
But not vocally. When did you start singing then?
Well, I started singing. I went to music and art high school,
Mm-hmm.
and my second instrument was voice. So I sang in the choruses there, and I was the singer with the dance band at music and art,
I see.
which I loved doing. And I also studied jazz improv and all of that.
And were you pretty good at it right from the start?
I don't know that I ever felt I was that good at it, but I just loved doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in college and late high school, I made my living teaching piano and singing in coffee houses and weddings and bar mitzvahs and other social.
Oh, is that right? You did all that
I did
circuit.
Yeah, I did all of it. I mean, I earned my money through school that way.
So you've never had any fear of performance, have you? You've just been natural.
Well, I think I have the usual fear of performance.
Which
the
is-
butterflies.
Right.
Beforehand, I'm not wildly afraid of it.
What is it then about performance that attracts you to perform?
Communicating.
Communicating.
Yeah. And to me, communicating with music and lyrics.
Well,
It's
the words make a big difference in terms of that
yes.
instant understanding.
Yeah, that's why I love singing.
Because music itself, though it communicates, it's a little more ephemeral. It's
Yes.
a little bit less direct to the brain as to what it's
Yes.
communicating.
Exactly.
But
And
words,
it's like it's the most personal kind of performance.
and you're known as a person who interprets songs, and we'll talk about that a little later in the questioning. But that interpretation then becomes important in terms of how you are communicating to people. Correct?
Oh yes.
It's not just saying the words or singing the words; it's how you do it.
Yes, and it's very special in cabaret because there you have a live audience. And the performance doesn't have to be the same every time.
Right. In fact, that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to find a new way to interpret it every time.
Yeah, and it's like the audience reaction is different every time.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that.
And all right, so aside from doing a lot of performing, and we'll talk about that too more in a moment, but aside from doing lots of performing, what do you do to keep yourself in the groove, so to speak, to develop your talents? Do you actually work at it every day or every other day, or how do you do it?
Yes, I do.
You sing every day?
Yes, pretty much.
And do you have a routine that you go through?
It's a flexible routine. Mm-hmm. I vocalize first, and then I do some songs.
Talk about your vocalization. What do you go through?
Well,
scales?
I am very fortunate. I found a teacher, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, Barbara Mayer Gustern, who is also the director of Austin and my cabarets. Mm. And she is a magician as a teacher. She really is. I've always been an alto. Yeah. I've had numerous voice teachers who've tried to make me a soprano. It never worked.
Well, you have a kind of a deeper register.
Yeah, I do, even my speaking voice.
Right.
And Barbara kind of takes you where you are and helps you do the things that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And her vocal exercises are always innovative. It's not the same thing every week or every other week.
She keeps it interesting that way.
She keeps it interesting.
That's great.
She speaks a kind of language that I speak, I guess. It's she makes it very visual.
Visual. Give us an example.
For example, she says, imagine you're carrying champagne glasses just around here, and you don't want to tip the glasses. Now sing that note without tipping the glasses.
Wow.
Oh, she's marvelous.
I've never heard anyone like that.
She's amazing. She is amazing. And oddly enough, I think I have an extra octave since I've been studying with her.
You have discovered an extra octave after all these years of singing?
Yes, after all these years of singing.
That's amazing.
I mean, she doesn't believe that there's a break in the voice if you place the notes right. And she really shows you how to place the notes.
Huh.
That's
unique.
She's my miracle worker.
So was there a point early in your life where you thought to yourself, I'm really good at this and I should be doing this in front of people?
Yeah, I was a scholarship student at the 3rd Street Music School when I was probably an early adolescent studying piano. And when I auditioned for it, Julius Rudel, the conductor, said to my mom, she should be a singer. And my mom said, I don't like opera. And so I never got to take singing lessons. But I thought at that point, gee, I must have something there.
Well,
and and at Music and Art, I kind of got singled out there.
Well, if someone like a Julius Rudel tells anyone else that you have that kind of ability, that's something to pay attention to.
Yeah. And I also was blessed with perfect pitch.
That is a blessing.
Yeah, it is and it isn't, actually.
Why isn't it?
It isn't, because if you try to play a transposing instrument, like I tried to play the clarinet, and there was no way that I could read C and, hear B flat. It just couldn't work. Also, it's very hard to, when I'm sight reading, if I'm doing it in a different key for the first time, in which the music's not written, a different key than the music is written, it's very hard for me. I have to first sing it in the written key, even if it's way too high for me, because
I see.
Most printed music is for sopranos.
And so this is for me very curious stuff, because I have the barest ability to just carry a tune. I mean, you don't want to listen to me sing. I can just sort of barely carry it. The question for me is, when you're looking at notes on a page or listening to a song, in your mind's eye, you're hearing, before you ever vocalize it, you're actually hearing it in your head, yes?
Yes.
And you're hearing it in perfect pitch.
Yes.
To me, that is amazing.
It's not it's never anything that I didn't know it until I got to music.
You didn't train to do that. You just have that.
I didn't even know I had it until I got to Music and Art. And everybody made a fuss because I had perfect pitch, and I thought everybody saw C and heard it C.
All right. So you work, this is great to know. You work at your craft every single day.
Yes.
And so it's important for listeners to understand that even when you're born with the gift of perfect pitch, and that you at a young age are already a prodigy and so on, that the continual development of your gifts, your talents, are very important if you want to use them to give to the world.
My analyst always used to say, Central Park is full of talented people.
Yes, it is. And what's we're going to listen to Carnegie Hall later, but what's the old joke? How do I get to Carnegie
how do
Hall?
I get to
practice? Yeah. And it always amuses me when people think that successful professionals just wake up in the morning and there it is. No, They have to work at it.
Oh God, yes. Oh,
Except
yeah.
I will tell you, I'm glad that you sing songs of Amanda McBroom, who's been on the show. And if you listen to her podcast, she doesn't work at it at all. She just goes. And I just marvel at that
That's
too.
interesting because she's a really good friend of mine, and I didn't know that.
Yeah, she'll, if you listen to that podcast, you'll hear that she talks about, I say, what do you do? She says, nothing.
I don't remember it. Yeah. I think, was she talking about performing or writing? Because I know her songs just come.
Well, the writing takes a little more effort because you've got to actually think through something new. But when she sings or prepares for a concert, she prepares herself. She prepares and she rehearses and all that. But she doesn't really work at it all that hard, according to her. Yeah. So I find it interesting when somebody has that ability, because that's also very rare. Most professionals have to really work at it, The great athletes have to really work at it.
Yes, I know, for example, that songs just come to her. Some just really, she writes in minutes.
Of course. And you can go back in the history of composition and find that a lot of the great memorable songs of all time just came to people out of the blue.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how you get to a song. What do you go through to choose a song to put in your act?
I fall in love.
How does that work? It's just something you hear and it just hits you?
I hear something and it's like, oh, or somebody sends me something or gives me something.
Mm-hmm.
And I've reached the point in my life now where I only sing songs I'm in love with.
Well, that's great.
Earlier, I used to sing, okay, I need an up tempo here and I need this there. Now I'm too old for that. I'm certainly not doing this for the money.
Sure. And frankly, at this point, people are coming to see you because they want to come to see you. It's nobody's twisting their arm and saying, hey, you gotta check this person out.
Yeah.
So, all right, when you decide you've got a song, what do you go through to then develop the performance of the song? How do you think it through?
Well, I work really with the lyric first.
You try to learn the intent of the
no,
words.
Not even learn it. That comes, but just the way you learn a soliloquy or the way you learn a role in acting.
Mm-hmm.
I try to really get the character, get what the song is about. I'm a sucker for good chords.
Sucker for good chords.
Yes, I really am. I mean, I fall in love mainly because of the chords.
Right.
And
I'll let you in on a secret. Me too.
Really?
Yes.
And you can't be that tone deaf.
I'm not tone deaf at all. I just don't have a particularly great voice. And
you have a lovely speaking voice.
Oh, well, thank you.
Would.
That's very kind of you.
I think you have to see Barbara May Augustine.
I got to come to New York, I guess.
Yes. She teaches occasionally in Philadelphia.
Well, that's still a little bit of a trip for me. That's still a 5-hour trip.
Yeah.
But, all right. So once you have started to work on the lyrics and the song, then the meaning or the depth of the song comes to you. Is that the point that you start to sing it and really memorize it?
I sing it while I'm working on, I sing the whole thing and just learn it. I mean, and that comes very easily.
Right. You have a pretty good memory for lyrics?
Yes. I wish I remembered script lines the way I remember songs.
Well, I wish I remembered what I had for breakfast, but that's another story.
I can leave a theater after seeing a musical and remember the songs.
First time you've seen it? Never having heard it before?
Yeah.
That's beyond amazing, because most common people, when they go to see a show, having never heard the show before and then go to see a musical, can't really process all the words and the visuals all at the same time. And sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4 viewings before it sinks in.
Yeah.
So the fact that you walk out and remember the lyrics is amazing.
They just come in on me.
And then you walk out and you could go sing that song or at least hum your way through it.
Yeah.
Do you remember the music that readily too?
Yes.
That's, okay. That's not common. You understand that, yes?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, most people do not have that ability. So that too is a marvelous gift. I wish I had that gift. I don't have that gift. When you're creating or programming your act, you're going to make a decision. I'm going to sing these songs and I'm going to put them in this order. You're going to program it this way. Do you have a particular audience in mind when you do that, or how are you thinking about how you want the show to progress?
I've done it several different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, especially with Austin, sometimes we have a theme. You know, our first show was two people going through life together.
Right, that makes sense.
Another show was two friends, you know, late nights in Smoky Bars.
Yeah.
Two friends, you know, who get together pretty frequently in bars, you know, especially when something's going on in one or the other's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes we pick songs that go into that too, that we love. The last show we did was really interesting because we didn't come up with a theme. We just didn't.
So what did you do? Hodgepodge of songs?
The show that we call Bits and Pieces.
That makes sense.
We just picked songs that we loved
Mm-hmm.
and did them in various orders, and they kind of fell into a theme by themselves.
And who writes the material that goes with it? Do you and Austin do it together?
Austin and I pretty much do that, yeah.
And is it mostly because
and Barbara, who's our director,
and Barbara, and I've never been to one of your shows, which I would love to do sometime.
Oh, I would love you to.
Assuming we ever get back to being able to be in the theater again.
Yeah, exactly.
What's interesting to me is how you then put the show together, because you didn't write any of the songs, correct?
Right.
You're just selecting songs that exist already, and you're not commissioning anybody to write you new songs. You're just finding songs that exist in the world that make sense for you.
Yeah.
And then you then need to have an evening of a show that has some kind of coherence.
Yeah.
And that's something that you work out with Austin.
Yeah, and oftentimes,
and Barbara.
Yeah, we don't do a lot of speaking in between.
It's just a lot of singing.
We sort of feel like the songs carry the plot.
Gotcha.
And audiences seem to get that.
Well, sure. And if you've programmed it right, they will get it.
They will get it, yes.
If you program it wrong, they won't understand. They're just sort of,
exactly.
It's like
but
listening to
I
a bunch
hate
of songs.
shows that are, and then I did this in my life.
Yes.
I mean, my feeling is sort of like, who cares?
I agree with you. Unless you have done something that's so awesome,
exactly,
that it needs to be told, then it doesn't need to be told. Let the songs and the music carry the day.
And Austin, like me, he's a storyteller.
Sure. Well,
yeah,
I adore Austin.
So do I.
I've been a fan of his forever.
He is one of both my and my husband's dearest friends.
Well, he's a marvel unto himself.
A marvel unto himself, yeah.
100%.
And we both love story songs, and I'm lucky that I have friends, and so does Austin, who are really great composers. And they give us a lot of songs that aren't published. They say, you can go through my trunk.
Wow.
And, they're story songwriters like Amanda, like Michelle, like John Bucchino, like Maltby and Shire.
When you said Michelle, you're talking about Michelle Browerman, who's also been on the show.
Yes.
And so you have had access to material that the public doesn't know.
Right. Carnegie Hall, I think, was played once in Carnegie Hall.
Wow. Well, we're going to definitely listen to it at the end of the show.
Yeah, it was commissioned for the 125th anniversary of Carnegie Hall.
Huh.
And Michael and John did it together, Michael Feinstein and John Bucchino.
Yeah.
And I sat in the audience and wept. And John gave me the music to it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And has anyone recorded it?
Not that I know of.
What we're going to listen to today is from your performance of it, but there's no formal recording of that.
Not that I know of.
Interesting.
There might be.
So I have to ask you before we get too deep into the show, clearly part of your life has been in psychoanalysis and psychotherapy.
Yeah, I don't practice now.
But you have
But I have for a long
time. And you've written about it a lot too.
Yes.
Okay, so.
Yeah, and occasionally I still see an old patient for a touch-up.
For a touch-up. I like that.
Yes.
I like that phrase. It's a touch-up. It's like the painting has lost a little
Yes.
gloss to it. So, all right. So how do you believe that your training and your reading and your understanding of psychotherapy and psychoanalysis, does it play into your development of songs or how you perform?
I think it probably does.
And if so, how?
And it in a mutual way, actually, because my training as a musician
Mm-hmm.
has also played into the way I practice and have practiced as a psychoanalyst.
How
Um,
so? That's interesting.
yeah, because they're all forms of communication.
Sure.
And sometimes something will say something, and I will think of a song, and that will give me an insight into what that person is talking about.
Interesting.
Yeah. And certainly, it's a funny thing with being an analyst because you train and it's a fairly rigorous training.
Sure.
But I once did a seminar at an American Psychological Association conference on what makes people be an analyst. And the only thing that the group had in common was that they were all what we call parentified kids.
Okay, what's that mean?
They were the problem solvers in their family.
I see.
So it's a real curiosity about people,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to the formal training. And, a desire to solve things
So in other words, how does
and explore them.
you like to explore what people's troubles or I guess the right word.
Strengths too.
Say again. Sorry.
Strengths also.
Strengths also. Sure.
Yeah.
And that comes through in the way that you develop a song in your act.
Yeah.
In what way? I'm still trying to understand.
For example, why would this person be singing this song? Why am I singing this song?
Mm-hmm.
Why does it have meaning? What do I want to communicate to the other person?
Do you find the songs that you're singing in this particular show at this particular time, whatever that is, that it has resonance in your current life?
Austin and I were doing a show way back in like 2000 or something like that in a club in New York that no longer exists. And I was doing a John Bucchino song.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, John didn't usually come to hear anybody do his music. I didn't know why, but he didn't. And that was cool with me,
Right.
Because he's a very particular guy. So I'm about to go up, and the manager of the room says to me, would you take a look at the guest list and see who you want to comp? And there's John's name. And I am beside myself. I'm horrified.
Right.
I run into the dressing room and I say to Austin, listen, I can't do this song. We have to change it. I'm not doing this song. John's going to be here and I can't. And what Austin said, and it's what I always, probably the most valuable acting lesson I ever had. What Austin said was sing the song about John.
Ooh.
And the name of the song was If I Ever Say I'm Over You. And it really taught me that, okay, this is about where I am right at this moment in my life.
Mm. Isn't that the heart of therapy, that you should go into the issue rather than avoiding the issue?
Exactly. And be where you are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if you're talking about the past, it's very present for you now.
Well, if the past is, I don't mean to get too far afield here, but if you're thinking or working on your past issues, they have relevance right now.
Yeah, exactly. And so you focus on the here and now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's an immediacy that acting, analysis, and singing have in common, really.
That's so fascinating to me. And I would imagine there are very few performers in the world that have your educational background in psychoanalysis. I would
guess,
think, I would
yeah.
think that's pretty unusual. And so you can come at it. That's why I'm trying to pick your brain a little
Yeah.
bit, because you can come at it from a perspective that most artists can't come at it.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the formal training in it. And I think that's what makes this so fascinating. So, all right, when you go to perform, do you use psychological tricks to get you over your nerves, or to
No, I just
do anything special?
What I do really stems from that story I just told you.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever I am at that moment, I try to use it in whatever I'm singing or acting.
That's incredibly valuable, what you just said. Is that and that came from Austin saying that to you?
Yes. Yes.
And whatever you're going through right now, use it.
Yes, exactly. And it always has something to do with the character or the song. It always does.
Do you think of yourself as a character as you're singing?
Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't.
Because you're also an actor.
Yeah.
And so you understand that process as well.
Yes. So sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't.
And so when you're taking a character, it's something that fits that moment or that song or that feeling or whatever it is. It's a character.
Yeah, and a character is always in part oneself.
Well, for sure.
Yeah.
How could it not be?
Exactly. So, I try to use, if I'm really nervous, I think, all right, the person singing this song or who wrote it, what are they nervous about? They must be nervous about something too. Bring it to the song.
And okay, so what are your favorite kinds of songs to sing? Are they
story
mostly
songs?
Just story songs, character songs,
character songs, and songs that tell a story.
And that means they're coming from somebody's heart, usually the composer's heart, and then you're interpreting.
And they strike a chord in mine.
Sure.
And I want to strike a chord in the audiences.
And do you find that audiences tell you that you've struck a chord in them?
Yes, I do.
I think that's inevitable if you're coming at it the way you're coming at it. Yeah. You're not just singing, you're actually putting some kind of heart and soul into it.
Yeah. The other person who helped me with that was Julie Wilson.
Oh, yeah?
When I was up at the O'Neill Theater Center.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a fellow there.
Right.
And I was the oldest fellow there. I went from being the youngest kid at Carnegie Hall to the oldest fellow at the O'Neill.
Well, that's a good run, as they say.
Yeah, but Julie Wilson worked that way. I mean, she was so from the heart, and I was fortunate to have her as a mentor.
And what else did you learn from Julie Wilson?
That's an interesting question, because what we worked on mostly was just, I guess it was the same thing now that I'm thinking about it.
Emotional core.
Be where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Be brave. She was very brave, Julie. She just let it all, and I've got a ways to go if I were going to be as brave as Julie. Julie really let it all hang out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well,
more than probably anybody else I know.
You have a large degree of courage in you already, because you're willing to get up and expose yourself in front of an audience. I don't mean take your clothes off. I mean expose your emotional core to the audience.
Yeah, and singing is more that way than I think anything else, because your instrument is you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not like, okay, if I get a different violin, this will sound better. Or
right.
Carry better or whatever.
Do you ever play piano and sing at the same time?
I did. In the years in between, well, I did all through high school. We'd get together because I could play by ear. So my friends and I would get together and we'd play whole scores of shows.
Right.
And then I did, during the years that I wasn't a musician, whenever I go to a party, someone would say, oh, sing something. Right. So I play and sing. I don't play the piano at all anymore.
Oh, you don't?
No.
That's something you've let go.
Yes, I have. I mean, sort of with a vengeance.
Was
You
was
know,
it?
I think
I don't want to dig too hard into that, but was there a reason why you stopped?
I think probably too intense too early.
Hmm.
And I have reclaimed music through singing.
That has resonance for me because there are things that I
Oh,
did
interesting.
as a young person that I no longer do.
Yeah.
And so I get it. I get it. If it's too intense too early, sometimes you just you're past it. You get by it,
Yes. Yes.
and you don't grow into it. It just gets past you.
Yes.
I understand. So, all right, you clearly are looking for songs to sing, and along with Austin, you're looking for things that are both inspiring to you and that you believe will inspire others, I assume.
Yes.
And is there, aside from just going through the words, is there something that you do to try and dig into that inspiring part of work? Is there something that you bring that inspires you further?
Yeah, I think so. Because there's something about having the music behind, there with the words, it's like seeing a movie with a wonderful score. You
Absolutely.
kind of know what happens or what's going to happen or what's happening in the music by the score.
Yes.
You don't disregard it.
Well, the music itself informs the listener as to
Right.
what kind of tone things are going to be.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember sometimes I remember the score and not the movie, because I was
Yeah.
listening so intently.
Well,
To the
but that was your natural facility as well, because the
Yes.
music stuck with you.
Yes.
And just 2 days ago from this recording, we lost one of the great film composers of all time,
I
Ennio
know.
Morricone.
I know.
And there was a perfect example of someone who created music that was
Oh,
unforgettable.
yes. Oh, God, yes.
I mean, even someone that doesn't have the ability to remember music on the first hearing remembers his music on
Of
the first hearing.
course. Of course. Yeah.
That also is a unique talent when you can do that.
Yeah. So to me, the words aren't standing alone. That's what makes singing different from acting. That you
Right.
have the score there.
Right.
And so you
So,
have to use that too.
so I'm going to ask you a question I ask lots of guests, and I probably think we may have already uncovered the answer, but I want to hear it again, which is, for you, what makes a good song good? Is it just the words? Is it the music? What is it?
No. It's a combination of the words. For me, it's the chords.
The chords. We're back to that. That's
Chords.
right.
Yes,
I
we're back
remember.
to that. Yes. And someone like, for example, and the unexpectedness of I
Mm-hmm.
never went for rock and roll music because I expect the chords.
I see.
They're standard chords, and I expect them for the most part.
Right.
You listen to someone like James Taylor do even a standard like River,
Right.
and something comes up in those chords that makes that song different than anybody else singing it.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That's what makes the truly great talents, the great artists, stand out, is that they do those unique little things.
Yeah. And my unique little things are chords. I mean, lots of rock and roll artists do unique things. And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say that it's all the same, but that to me, the chords are standard.
Right. I get it. Because that's what really, if you think about it, that's what radio play demanded in order for them to play it over and over again.
Yeah.
Because
And when somebody has that combination of a moving lyric and something unexpected in it just gets me.
And you, as you've said before, when you do live performance, you're looking for something fresh every single time you sing.
Yes.
You're not looking to repeat. You're looking to find something new.
Right.
All right. So is there anything that you do to seek that out? Is something you tell yourself to forget about, or something you tell yourself you must remember?
No, I think it's more coming out of where I am that day.
So you're talking about what actors go through, which is being in the moment.
Yeah, very much so.
That correlation between acting and singing is back to that.
In fact, I started acting because, to help me with singing. I started taking acting lessons.
Mm-hmm. And has the singing helped you with the acting? Has the acting helped you with the singing?
Both.
It's one hand washes the other.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Because they're both teaching you nuances and different ways to look at things.
Yes, exactly. But that's really that's the only way I can get a fresh performance, which is I'm not in the same place today as I was yesterday.
I wish I could live life a little more like that.
Well, I think it's funny. I think since I've gone back to performing,
mm-hmm.
It is more like that because it has to be.
Well, especially live performance for sure, because once you've recorded a performance, it is what it is.
Yes, exactly.
And that is the beauty of theater and cabaret and live performance is it's never the same twice. It's there and it's gone. Poof, it's gone. And so I think that's what makes it exciting to watch the live theater. And I'm assuming it's a little bit of a tightrope when you go out there.
Oh yeah. It's flying without a net.
So what would you say are the biggest challenges you go through when you're getting ready to do a show or when you're on stage? What are the things that are sort of constant challenges for you?
Well, okay. One in both acting and singing
mm-hmm.
would be forgetting about the last performance,
letting it go.
The way the audience responded to a particular thing.
Got it.
Just being there. With acting, I think every actor is scared about forgetting the script.
Sure, of course.
So that's in there. I never worry about forgetting a lyric. Not ever.
Ever? No. That's awesome.
That's not to say I never have. It just isn't something I worry about, It's
when you've forgotten it, how'd you recover?
I go with the music. I pick it up or whatever.
Do you hum or
I throw something in there that feels like it'll fit,
I see.
Or I make a joke or whatever. If it's terribly lost, but it's not something I worry about. It's something I worry about with script. Come to think of it, I hadn't thought of it this way. See, I would be worried as a singer if I forgot the music,
mm-hmm.
because that's what the composer wrote.
Right.
The composer also wrote the lyricist.
Sure.
But it's like I'm classically trained, and so it's very hard for me to forget exactly what was written by the composer.
Right.
And with a playwright, it's like, I have to have that playwright's words. Exactly.
Yep.
Down to the, and.
But you've also done a bunch of TV and film, and that they're not necessarily respecting the screenwiter or the playwright.
Yes.
That they're frequently riffing and ad-libbing and doing other things.
Oh, definitely. And I've done it a lot.
And does that
sometimes,
Go ahead.
And sometimes the playwright likes it.
Well, if you've plussed their work, if you've made them seem better, then they're happy with you.
Yeah.
But if you haven't, then they might not be happy with you.
Yeah, exactly. So that's there in an acting performance. I've forgotten what your question was.
Well, the question is actually I've forgotten what the question is. What's the biggest what's your biggest challenge in performance?
That and letting myself fly without a net.
That's a really great way to look at it. You're giving yourself the permission to fly without a net. Yeah. Yes. Do you find that that's challenging to do?
Yes.
So is that somehow fear of falling? I mean, when you don't have a net, that's what the big fear is. You don't want to hit the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not fear of failing. It's, I think, fear of showing facets of myself.
Mm. Interesting.
It's lack of control. It's lack of control. That's
lack
right.
of control. So it's your show. It's you and Austin, or your solo show.
Yes.
There's no one in control more than you. And
yes.
And you have some fear of a loss of control.
Yes. Yes, because you're going someplace that you're really not sure where you're going. You may be sure of the words, you may be sure of the music, but you're not sure of emotionally where you're going.
Well, that sounds like every jazz performance that's ever been
played. Right. It is. It's a kind of riffing.
Is that how you look at it, as riffing?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
That you go, do you clear your mind before you hit stage?
No.
No, you have it all in your head as you're going.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't clear my mind first.
Interesting. Are there songs that you have yet to sing that you know you want to sing someday?
I want to play Mrs. Lovett someday.
You want to play Mrs. Lovett?
Yes.
That's my favorite musical of all time.
Oh, mine too.
I love that.
Mine too. And my sister, who was a violinist, played in the pit of the original production.
Oh, is that right?
So I saw it like about 12 times, sometimes from the audience and sometimes from the pit.
Well, to me, that's the greatest musical ever conceived.
I would tend to agree with you.
You know, Hamilton's trying to get up into that place
and very well may.
And very well may.
Because he is a genius.
There's no question. Well, he's had 2 shows play on Broadway, and both of them win the Tony. So
yeah,
that's saying something.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a genius. Is correct.
Yeah, but Miranda. Sweeney Todd is my show.
Well, and so you want to play Mrs. Lovett?
Yeah.
You want to pop pussycats into pies?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And I know every lyric of every song. And my kids went to a theater camp, and I kept hoping, that they do Sweeney Todd, and somehow they would ask me to play Mrs. Lovett.
Interesting. Well, maybe one of these days you will.
I hope so.
All right. So what things, either way, have you learned from performing that you want to repeat all the time? I know you want to fly without a net, but what things do you come at performance that you actively seek to make sure you do again and again?
I actively seek, I think, to make contact.
With the audience?
With the audience, or if it's a scene, with the person I'm doing the scene with.
Mm-hmm.
That's my main thing.
Do you think of the audience as your scene partner?
Yes.
When you're doing a solo show?
When I'm doing a solo, sometimes it's Austin.
Right.
I'll sing it to him.
Right.
And sometimes it's the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's someone who's not even on stage.
Interesting. But the idea is
or in the audience.
But the idea is to find some way to connect. That word is important, connection.
Yes, I use it all the time. That's exactly it.
Well, that is the key, I think.
Yes.
To all great performances.
Yes.
In all fields, whether you're a dancer or a musician or whatever.
Absolutely. Or an analyst, or a singer, or, an actor.
Because if you're not connecting, it's pretty forgettable.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I think so. I think it then becomes less, I don't know what the right word is, not intense. It's less intriguing. It's not as interesting.
I mean, I know I've seen so many people with extraordinary voices, really voices you die for.
But don't connect.
I
know exactly what you're talking about. They have, as you say, to die for voices.
Yes.
But there's no there.
Yes, exactly.
And truthfully, okay, so I'm from the school of thought that I would rather go to see a show with a singer who can't hit every note, but is performing the heck out of the song.
Oh, me too.
Rather than a brilliant singer who can't act at all.
Me too. Always.
So I always think of Rex Harrison. I got to see
Yes,
Rex
me
Harrison.
too.
I got to see him do My Fair Lady.
And also Richard Burton.
And Richard Burton. Yeah.
Yeah.
Neither of them great singers, but
No.
could sell the song. And I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
And that's no reflection at all on your voice whatsoever. I'm just saying
No, I mean,
because you got
I have
perfect
a
pitch.
pleasant voice, but I don't, I'm not one of these 4-octave range people.
But you're working on selling the story of the song.
Yes.
Versus worrying about how perfect the notes are.
Yes.
And I think that's a much more enjoyable listen for that.
I feel that way too. It's what I'd rather hear. So when I go to see someone.
What would you say is the biggest disaster you've ever gone through, and how did you get your way out of it?
It's funny. There hasn't been a big disaster. There's been a series of small disasters. Like in one of the shows, the stage was in a different formation at Pangea than it usually is. Right. And Austin tripped and fell flat.
Oh,
it was horrible, And I said something like, you always have to upstage. Because it was the only way not to. And like a trooper, he just got up. Mm-hmm. And did his thing.
And he wasn't hurt.
He wasn't hurt, no, fortunately.
Fortunately, is right.
Yeah.
But that's live theater. That's the beauty of live theater.
Yeah, I did a show. I did an Arthur Miller. I can't think of the name all of a sudden. A 4-person Arthur Miller show.
All My Sons?
The Last Yankee.
Oh, The Last Yankee.
The Last Yankee. And in one of my entrances, I fell flat on the stage. And because I went off into the audience and then came back on stage.
You went off into the audience?
No, I mean.
As an exit.
The theater was that way, my entrance.
Got it, okay.
My exit, at that point was to go off stage through the audience. And when I made my re-entrance, I fell flat. And I don't know what I did, but I must have done something okay, because somebody said, I didn't know whether that was programmed, that was in the play or not.
Well, you kept going. You didn't stop.
No, I didn't stop.
Well, so
I guess that's the answer. You keep going. You
keep going. Well, isn't that the old troopers philosophy? You just keep going.
That is the answer.
You don't stop, because as soon as you stop, then you've taken everybody out of that moment and the show's over.
And you don't say, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. You don't exactly. You don't apologize. So believe it or not, we've been speaking for almost an hour.
Oh my God! It went so fast.
Yes, I know. It's a lot of fun when they get going like this, and we've had so much great information coming from you on how do you do this, which is really what it's all about. So I'm wondering, you've clearly worked with various people and met and worked with lots of different people in your time. You've already given us a story or two, but do you have a strange, oddball, quirky, funny, offbeat story that you could share with us?
Yeah, I do have one, and it's how I met my husband. Okay, he and I were both in Ann Jackson's acting class.
Right. We should explain who Ann Jackson was. She was right. Eli Wallach's wife, and she was also a very fine actress herself.
Yeah. And both of us were in her acting class, and we were chosen to be scene partners. And we did a scene from Michael Weller's play, The Shadow Box. Okay. And it was fine, And we decided it was fine enough that we should do another scene. And so we picked Frankie and Johnny in the Claire de Lune.
Got it. Terrence McNally.
Yes. And we did the bedroom scene from Frankie and Johnny.
Yeah.
In the Claire de Lune. And well, it went fine in rehearsal, trust me. Then we had to come back into Ann Jackson's class and do it. And suddenly we were both clutched with anxiety. It was horrible. You ask about my worst disaster, that might be it. And Ann said, which was like, this was a fairly new relationship at this time.
Right.
And Anne said, I don't know. She said, there's just no chemistry there. And I thought, oh my God, is she talking about the scene or the relation?
And she was clearly wrong about the
Yeah,
relationship.
about the relationship, because we've made it together for about 27 years.
Yeah, well, that somehow that worked out okay.
Yeah.
So she must have been talking about the scene then.
Yeah.
Well,
But it just made us so self-conscious.
Isn't that interesting? Well, that if I'm remembering that scene correctly, it's fairly charged, isn't it? Isn't it sexually charged?
Yes.
So there was probably both felt like you had literally had your clothes torn off of you.
Exactly. That's exactly what it felt like. And I thought, don't do that unless you're the Alfred Lund Fonda.
Well, if you'd only met Austin prior to that, he would have told you to go into it.
That's right. That is really true. That is really true.
And that would have taken the onus away from it. You would have gone deeply
that's
into
right.
it.
But it was fairly early in my acting.
And then Ann Jackson would have said, "What chemistry?"
Yes, Meryl Streep and people like that can do that.
Well, that's why they make the big bucks.
That's right.
Yeah, indeed. So last question. Do you have a solid piece of advice or a tip that you can lend to those who are either trying to break into the business, into cabaret or singing or acting, or maybe they're in a little bit, but trying to get to that next level?
Well, other than be in the moment, it's be in the moment, which is the most insecure place in the world.
Acting,
and one has to embrace that. One has to embrace rejection. One really has to do it because you love doing it. It can't be because the critics will love it or the audience will love it or it'll make a great next role or whatever. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason. You go to an audition and the casting director says, that was just wonderful. Are you free the days of blah, 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 blah? And then you never hear from them again. And you just have to let it go. You just have to say, okay, this is the way my life is. And if I need something steady in my life, either get out of acting or singing and have something else, or be in it and have something else that feels steady in your life.
Well, that's just tremendous advice and truly right on the money. I've told people forever, if you don't love what you're doing in show business, you should think about stepping aside, because people are just going to run you over who are madly in love with what they're doing.
Yes.
It is a passion business.
Yes,
and it's not for the faint of heart or the weak of stomach. You have got to weather lots of storms.
Yes.
And you're going to get far more no's than yeses.
Oh, yes.
Far more.
In fact, one of the things that I've often thought is when I went into this professionally, I had already been successful at one career in my life that I really loved. And I had that to sort of fall back on in my heart. And I think of, some of the young people who haven't got that. They just come in here and they're just greeted with no, 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 you know?
Yeah.
And how do they handle that?
Well, for many people, and we know this, for many people, it's demoralizing to the point where they give up.
Yes.
And I've also said for a long time that people who succeed have to just simply not give up. And eventually, if you hang in there and you have even the most modest of abilities, you will eventually succeed in some way. I
totally agree with you. That's 3/4 of the battle. Just
showing up.
Showing up.
Yeah, indeed. Barbara, this has been a delight. I'm so pleased that you've been on the show today. And I just want to thank you so much for this fantastic amount of wisdom that you've given us today.
Thank you. And thank you for you're a wonderful interviewer. I feel so comfortable with you, and your questions are so incisive and resonant.
Well, thank you. It's very kind of you to say. And now, as promised, we have a great treat today. please enjoy Barbara Bleier performing the song Carnegie Hall, which was written by Michael Feinstein and John Bucchino, and accompanied on piano by Paul Greenwood.
When I was 4, the music started in my soul. My fingers found a language on the keys. The world around me disappeared, and I was home in a land where I do as I please. Before too long, I learned to read and write the dots. I filled the pages with my childish scrawl. My father said, you practice hard, and one day, child, you're gonna play Carnegie Hall. I asked, who plays in that great place? He said, only the best of the best. And as a smile lit up his face, I took what he said as a test. So I doubled up my efforts and I practiced hard. I listened to the greats that came before. The wondrous things I heard caught fire in my soul, inspiring me to learn more. Then as it happens, good things turn to better things, until one fateful day I got the call that said I'd be performing with some big name stars at a concert in Carnegie Hall. Dad stood there taking in the place. He said, you're with the best of the best. And as the tears ran down his face, I buried my head in his chest. Now music was the bond we shared until he died, and music is what ties me to him still. The love of rhythm, rhyme, and notes he fed in me have always been life's greatest thrill. Now I've stood on this stage a dozen times or more, but the first time is the one I most recall. The thought that I was playing in this hallowed space, the ghosts that seemed to hold me in their warm embrace, the pride that I saw shining in my father's face when he saw me at Carnegie Hall.
And so we've come to the end of today's Story Beat. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to give us a rating or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great Story Beat episodes to you. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.